All right, well, let's talk about this Tom Mars situation. So, what was it? Monday, Jim Harbaugh comes out and he's in all of his Chargers gear, and they ask him if he has any comment on what's been going on with Michigan lately. And he says, yeah, I do have a comment on that. He says, I never lie, I never steal, I never cheat. That's the lessons I was taught, and I taught everybody else and my family, and yada, yada, yada. Went on this big, huge thing about how he doesn't lie, he doesn't steal, he doesn't cheat. All right, so Jim is basically saying, I'm innocent. Don't get me into this. Well, the NCAA is coming after Jim because of his failure to cooperate. Tom Mars is shedding some light here by posting an email exchange he had with the NCAA, where the NCAA wanted some kind of information. It's a little hard to deduce, but they wanted information from some emails from Jim Harbaugh. And so they sent an email to Tom Mars to have him review these emails and then send back the information. Tom Mars was in the middle of a Tennessee case. He had a lot of other things going on, he said, so he had some trouble getting to it. So he asked them, when do you want this back by? And they said, tomorrow. Looks a little strange, right? I mean, it's like, all right, you want this guy to review like 6,000 emails in one day? Like, this is crazy. Well, somebody quote tweets Tom Mars and says, Tom, when did you get the information? And it looks like there was some time in between emails here. When did they email you back? He says, well, I got the information on January 24th. I emailed them that same day, asked when they wanted it back. They responded on January 30th, telling me they wanted it back by January 31st. So, Zack, Tom Mars obviously is trying to defend Jim Harbaugh here. Do you think the defense is strong, or with the context of the timing that he did have those emails for a week? Sure, you can blame the NCAA that, they probably could have emailed him back a little sooner than, a day before when they wanted it. But do you think that Tom Mars has an accurate case here to say that Jim Harbaugh did not fail to cooperate with the NCAA?
No, I don't think. I think it's, I think we have to remember that Tom Mars represents his client. And so his job is to try to do the best thing he can for his client. And I think what he's really doing, if we're honest, is he's trying to paint a narrative that's already in the mainstream media, which is the NCAA is incompetent, which is to discredit the NCAA in any case that they have against Jim Harbaugh, which honestly is smart. Might be a little bit of a hint of where I'm going with my blame list. But that being
You're
said,
all about the hints tonight with your blame ranking.
Yeah.
You're going to give them to us before we even get to that segment.
But you don't know when or why. You don't know when or why. That's all I'm saying. I could be blaming Ryan Day's brother for all that.
I did put him on the graphic. He will be on the graphic here soon. So,
yeah. But in all seriousness, I think this is only one piece of the whole realm of Jim Harbaugh not complying. And there has been a repeated history of Jim Harbaugh not complying with things like that's why Burgergate was such a big deal, was he wasn't playing ball with the NCAA. So like this idea, like, oh, the NCAA is making him like jump through hoops. It is creating the narrative that the NCAA is on a witch hunt. He had a week. And like, if you're a professional lawyer, if you ask for a deadline, but you know that this is a high profile case, you start working on it right away. Now, granted, he's in the middle of a case, but like, you're telling me that he can't get through at least some of those emails, maybe not all 6,000, but like a good faith effort of a couple hundred in a week. Like I just don't think I think it is a ploy to shift the narrative onto the NCAA's incompetence, which is honestly a great strategy.
Oh, and it's what Tom Mars should be doing. I mean, that's what he gets paid to do, like you pointed out.
So like, it's the right play. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but it's the right play if you're representing Jim Harbaugh, but it's wrong.
Right.
The thing about this is
Joel,
this
I
is
mean,
all
you
PR.
tell us, man. We're two Ohio State fans here. We were told in our last video that we were fair to Michigan fans. So, I'm hanging that hat. I need to like plaque back here. Like I was fair to Michigan fans, okay? Like give me a plaque or something. And I do try to be fair. But you tell us, like, are we looking at it the wrong way here? And you're like, guys, they gave him a day. Like the NCAA is pretty incompetent here and really doesn't have a case to stand on that Jim Harbaugh failed to cooperate.
So I'll take a couple angles here. First things first, we have a bunch of lawyers talking about something that's not even a legal case. Like this isn't even a. The NCAA has zero subpoena power, so this is all that's being discussed here. I don't even know what the legal ramifications that are even being discussed. Is someone being sued? Is this a countersuit? Is this all part of the Sharon Moore investigation that I read about a little bit briefly this morning? As I dove into this, I sent it to my brother, who is an attorney, and he basically said this is a bunch of posturing in public. This is PR. All this is public relations. Jim Harbaugh no longer has any financial stake in the University of Michigan except for as a graduate. Nothing that he did there is going to be punished by the NCAA because basically any lever the NCAA had, they let go when they let Michigan continue to compete last year at the end of the season. After Jim Harbaugh was suspended for the suspensions that some of it was voluntary. I honestly, the second he went to the Chargers, I flushed Jim Harbaugh out of my mind forever. Like, because I was like, I don't have to deal with this guy anymore. I mean, he got hit by a car when he was a kid and when he lived in Iowa City. Like, he's got an interesting history with the
what?
Hawkeyes.
He got hit by a car when he was in Iowa City? I haven't heard that story.
Yeah, his dad Jack was an assistant at Iowa before Hayden Fry got there, and Jack and Jim. Jim and John lived like 3 blocks away from Kinnick Stadium, and he was playing in the front yard, and he ran out in traffic and got hit by a car, broke his leg. So there's
that is okay. I'm not laughing that he got hit by a car. I'm just laughing like I'd never heard that story before, but it kind of sounds like a Jim Harbaugh move to me personally.
Yeah, and he talks about it, and it's weird because I couldn't have more respect for John Harbaugh as the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens, and I couldn't have more disdain for Jim Harbaugh as just this weird, crazy uncle of a head football coach who you realize he's good at what he does, but at the same time, I just don't care enough about him to even worry. And Tom Mars, Mr. University of Arkansas Law, like you just look like a petty attorney who's like, you know what, I was too busy with another case, so I couldn't get to my client whose net worth is $40 million. Like you're worried about $38,000 of legal fees that you could write off first off if you wanted to. And B, that's less than 1% of his net worth for something that I just don't know what the financial stakes are. I read this and I'm like, I don't understand what the financial stakes are. There's no criminal case here. They broke 0 laws unless they may have broke some sort of communication law if they tapped into some sort of communication system to steal these signals with the whole Connor Stallions thing. But it's like, what are we even fighting about anymore? The guy's gone. We're not gonna get Sharon Moore fired out of this whole deal. So like what does any of these people have to gain by continuing to further this down the line? So the NCAA said you didn't cooperate. You didn't cooperate. It's pretty clear you didn't cooperate with the investigation. Who cares? Move on. By not cooperating, you didn't incriminate yourself and you didn't break any laws by not cooperating. So until a law is broken, I don't really care.
No, I think that's a good point. And I think it leads into what my next question was going to be, which is like, does Jim Harbaugh even care if he gets in trouble with the NCAA? Like you said, there's no law being broken here. So like Tom Mars can, what'd you say, posture for PR in this situation, but like, it's not like the NCAA is coming after him and suing him for, millions of dollars. If anything, the NCAA is just going to give him a show cause and say, Jim Harbaugh, you have a 10-year show cause and you're never coming back to college football. if I'm Jim Harbaugh, I don't care. I got my job in the NFL. I got out of college football and got to the NFL, and you got a pretty good job. You got Justin Herbert there at the Chargers. You got an okay defense, with a pretty good secondary. Like, you're doing okay going to the Chargers. I mean, Zach, you tell me, man, like, does Jim Harbaugh even care if the NCAA punishes him? Like, why are they even worrying about this?
So I've mentioned the Kings of the North podcast on here before. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis, they do great work. And I thought Doug made a really good point in his most recent podcast that legacy is a big issue here. And I think that's why Jim Harbaugh does care. And I think that's why Jim Harbaugh is being as obstinate as he has been and he continues to be. And I don't think it's just for himself. I think it's for his players, that team. Like, I think a lot of people, like, legitimately, a lot of people see 2023 Michigan as the greatest season in Michigan football history. And so to be a part of that is very special. And if this thing ends up and I think it is becoming more and more clear that this was clearly a violation, and clearly there was at least some sort of benefit towards Michigan's success. You're going to defend against that because it's grating against the thing that you legitimately worked so hard to get, even if it was through nefarious means. And so I do think he cares. I think that's why, like, as awkward as he is, I think part of the reason for his awkwardness is this is how he fights. So I do think he cares. And I think the legacy, not just for himself, more importantly for his team, I do think matters to him.
I think, to your point, legacy does matter, but I think legacy is one of the hardest things to protect as a coach. I think of the man I cut my teeth under at the NAIA level, Steve Ryan, who's at Morningside University in Sioux City, Iowa. He's won 5 national championships, but you're only as good as your last big win, right? And so the last year they lost, their arch rival won a couple national titles. Kalen DeBoer, he's making a big legacy play here by leaving Washington and going to Alabama. But you look at Ohio State. Well, who's one of the first coaches any Big Ten fan mentions as great? And the first person they mention is Woody Hayes. Woody Hayes' career ended by punching a kid on the field. Joe Paterno, talk about a legacy that just completely crumbled in 18 months, and I'm not comparing Jim Harbaugh to those two tremendously nefarious scandals, but at the end of the day, what does Jim Harbaugh tell recruits? You're going to come here to be a Michigan man, and nobody can take that away from you, right? So when you think about legacy, this is probably going to taint that legacy a little bit, but I want to control it. It's just not possible because legacies are determined by exterior narratives, not internal narratives.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great point, and we can try to control our legacies as much as we can, but at the end of the day, it's in the court of public opinion, right? I mean, what people think about you and how things end, but yeah. Some good comments here before we move on. Sky U Pod says, I've been backed over by a car. Nothing special about it. So, Eric says, Jim Harbaugh being hit by a car actually explains a lot. The car had an enthusiasm unknown to mankind, I'm sure. Just in that a little bit there. Good one there, Eric. And then loyal Philip, thank you for being here, Philip. He says, people just like to pitch and complain. I think he meant something else. Complain regardless of it making any difference. We appreciate you censoring that for us, Philip.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of this is just complaining and trying to, form a narrative, which I don't know. Like, I can't come down too hard on Jim Harbaugh for it, because if my whole legacy and the legacy of my team and program was on the line, I might do the same thing too, if I'm being completely honest. So, all right, guys, let's get to
the one last thing I'll say on this is,
okay, go ahead.
one last thing I'll say on this is this happened in an era of college football that no longer exists. This happened, the 2023 Michigan team exists pre-mega conference expansion and pre-college football playoff. So no matter what the narrative is moving forward, people will argue that team could be great, but there's teams that are better because they won in a 12-game playoff environment. So the beautiful thing about college football is it literally is a self-healing organism that no matter what year you're in, the next year is completely different, especially with the transfer portal and with all these other entities that or other things that have changed. Honestly, 2023 doesn't even matter anymore. So legacy is something for historians and talking heads like us to talk about. Ultimately, in the reality of college football, legacy is a moot point because it can't be curated, it can't be controlled because the game is changing so rapidly year by year.